everyone, this is Rhiannon Payne, Marketing Director at Ruby Central, and I'm here today with Ratnadeep Deshmane. Ratnadeep is a software craftsman and founder at BetaCraft. He's based in Pune, India, and will be in Philadelphia for the final RailsConf, where he'll be giving a talk on design decisions in Rails. Ratnadeep, it's great to chat with you today.
Thank you. Thank you for this interview and the opportunity to speak with you.
Absolutely. We're super excited to see you at RailsConf. Today is June 27th, so we're, I think, about 10 days out from the conference, which is crazy.
Right.
Are you excited? How are you feeling leading up to it?
Yeah, pretty excited, especially preparing the talk and having an opportunity to interact with the community again. Nothing like it. So really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So you've been to a few Rails comps and Ruby comps over the years, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. First time I was in US in 2015. So
Mhm.
that year I was doing a digital nomading, traveling to multiple places and attending Ruby conferences as well. So I remember that year I have been to about seven Ruby conferences in single year across three
Wow.
different countries. So yeah.
That's great. I love that idea of digital nomading, but aligning it with different conferences. I feel like a Ruby conference is a great excuse to visit Japan or Amsterdam. What have been some of your favorite conferences over the years?
In Austin, I had attended Keep Ruby Weird
Mhm.
conference. This was back in 2015, so that was really fun. RubyConf India is something that I always attend since 2011.
Oh,
So
wow.
very close-knit group of people that I always interact with. So that's one of the top there. And then I attended one conference in Colombia as well. That was back in 2015 again. So that I would say is one of the highlight of all the conferences that I have attended.
Yeah, and we're really excited about this last Rails Comp coming up. I think it's going to be a really lovely send-off to a conference that has been around for almost 20 years now, that has made such an impact on so many people. Do you have any favorite memories of previous Rails Comps that you've been to?
So 2011 was my first RailsConf, and that was also when I was just getting started with Ruby as a programming language and Rails as a framework. I had been into the ecosystem for about 6 to 8 months, and I remember listening to the talks from Yehuda Katz, Ola Bini, who were in person at the conference. And then at that time, I think I also got introduced to the Pragmatic Programmer book through the community itself. And a lot of people I got to know on Twitter. So I would say that completely changed the way I look at the programming languages and at the communities, because that this was my first community and it was so warm and welcoming that since then I've never looked back. Yeah.
What was your introduction to Ruby as a language?
I was in my college trying to build a startup with my friend. We were trying to build this system which will integrate with the Google Maps and be able to show all the OH advertising boards, out of home advertising boards, and then make it accessible over Google Maps itself. So a couple of friends tried to help me. I was doing electrical engineering back then. And while iterating to that product, I came across this friend who was using Ruby on Rails. And because he was there to help out, I started looking into that and got to know about Ruby on Rails. And using that programming language, we built the first version of our code base and our first product. So that's how I got into Ruby on Rails.
What did you find different about Ruby and Rails compared to some other programming languages that you might have used over the years?
So back then I had tried PHP, .NET, and then I had tried Ruby on Rails. One of the first thing that I had done was I started with Ruby on Rails directly instead of learning Ruby separately. And then later on, I got to know about Ruby. The introduction was first with Rails for me and then slowly into Ruby. But then I realized how much magic is actually there in the Ruby as a programming language itself. That Rails is taking like couple of steps ahead of that and making it more beneficial and practical and usable. And over the years, I tried and used multiple languages. But what I like is in terms of Ruby, the readability, the ease, and the way syntax flows and how readable the code becomes and how some of the concepts are easily abstracted. I feel that's something that is really nice. As you have asked this question, I would also like to share that I had worked on one project called as a Ruby Vernac. So I was trying to introduce Ruby as a programming language to my brother. And he used to come up with the questions like, okay, why do we use a word called class, or why there is a word called def being a definition, it defines a function, that's why there is a def. But the many a times the questions were coming from the point of view that he didn't understood the English, so it was harder for him. because English was the second language. So then that got me thinking. And then here in Pune, we were having a RubyConf, Deccan RubyConf, that's a regional Ruby conferences. And then for that Ruby conference, I created a version of Ruby wherein you could write the code in Marathi, which is a local language here. And it was loved by everyone so much because it opened up doors for you to learn programming and object oriented concepts in Marathi without having to know English. The purpose was never to go production with this, but uh, use it as a tool to learn the language better. And I would say if I had to do this same project with any other programming language compared to Ruby, it wouldn't have become that much funnier. So I created that into Marathi, then I created it in Hindi, which is most popular language here in India. And then there were some versions of that same Ruby Vernac in multiple other Indian languages as well. And the highlight was the Hindi versions had some codes and programs which actually were some stories that were told to kids when they are growing up. Looking at a program or a code wherein you are looking at stories that you have heard around you is so much easier. Instead of learning programming with foo bar and then in a third language, you could have a stories from your own backyard in your own language, and that was really interesting. And I think only with Ruby, writing the code in your own mother tongue as well, it can be so expressive and fluent. So that I would say keeps Ruby substantially different from any other programming languages that I've used.
Wow, that's an incredible gift to your community. Are people still using these tools that you've created today, or?
So it's a open source. There are some versions created of it. I have talked with couple of schools as well for adoption, but as of now, there is no real active users on it as such, but it's open source.
That's incredible. Yeah, I would love to. I'll actually ask you for the links to that after this so I can put them in the description of the video. Did your brother end up sticking with Ruby after that?
Yes, yes. He completed college and he became Ruby programmer as well. So he's still with Ruby and Rails stack.
Very cool. And do you guys work
Yes,
together at BetaCraft or?
yes, he works with me at BetaCraft.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about BetaCraft. What kind of projects are you working on?
Yeah, at BetaCraft, we are a consulting company working primarily with Ruby on Rails. Lately, we have started work with a little bit of a Python and Node.js as well, but the primary focus is still with Ruby on Rails. Now we have about 20 to 25 people working with Ruby on Rails. We have some active projects that are in development since couple of years, where we are helping out some of the founders build their vision. And then we also have some projects where we are working with Rails version upgrades, etc. So all sorts of projects from small startups to big companies.
Is there anything in particular that you've been working on lately that's really interesting from a technical perspective? Anything with AI or new technologies?
So if I have to think about it, I would say as of now, what we are trying to do is use GenAI for more productivity gains in terms of doing Ruby on Rails development. And I was looking at one of the interview you did with DHH, and I found something that he mentioned very relatable, which is that Rails having its conventions and opinions, it falls so nicely in terms of getting the code generated from the GenAI. Because what's happening is if I'm generating the code for, let's say, a Python project or any of the Express projects, there are a lot of decisions that need to be made. And then if I'm not making those decisions and I'm giving abstract instructions to the LLM, now LLM is responsible for making those decisions. And then those decisions can sometimes be right or sometimes be very wrong, which I don't like, right? But then if we look at the Rails code that is being generated, what happens is because Rails have these conventions that are followed by all the developers, the LLMs that are trained on the Rails code basis also have inherited those decisions and tend to follow those decisions. So if I give a instructions and there are 10 decisions to be made, if let's say a Python or an Express project, Node.js project is doing about 4 or 5 decisions, right? In Rails, I see at least 8 to 9 decisions that are made with conventions, and I'm okay with that code. So the productivity gains using AI are much higher in the Rails world, at least in my experiments, compared to the other ones.
Yeah, I've actually heard that from a lot of Rails developers. What tools are you and your team using right now for code generation or assisted coding?
We have been trying out all types of tools that are available. And as of now, Cursor, there are some projects which are heavily emphasizing on Cursor, and there are some projects that are going deep down on the Windsurf. I would say these are the two main tools that are heavily being invested on. So we are gaining the skills to use it to the fullest extent, I would say. Yeah.
Do you see using these tools actually changing your workflows or your productivity in a meaningful way?
Yes, substantially. Like, for example, I would say the devs who are making the maximum amount of progress and getting the maximum amount of productivity with these tools are the ones who are throwing away a lot of code. So with the AI, you can generate a lot of code in a very short span or a duration. So that gives you a chance to experiment like never before. So something that would be very interesting itch that you want to automate into your own project. But with the day-to-day task, you just don't have a time for that. Now with the AI, it's very much possible to build that one dashboard that is listing out all the statistics that you want to have a look at, or building out some kind of an automation that you always wanted to build, but then you did not had a time. So all those things have become really fast. And the other thing that I would say is all of the tech debt earlier, touching that tech debt from your regular work used to be quite a lot of time. But now what you can actually do is you can take up the time, even the short amount of a time, because the productivity is high, that you can revisit those missing test cases or some warnings that are coming up for the upgrade and whatnot. So I feel that it has made programming quite a lot more enjoyable because of that.
I love hearing these stories about how teams are actually leveraging new tools in ways that it's less about hype. Oh my God, these tools are so cool. AI is amazing. And more practical. We can be more efficient if we figure out how to use these and create processes and be able to experiment more and be more innovative. And that's why we have these AI tools at the end of the day to help us build better products, not to replace developers, at least in my opinion.
And the way, so internally within the company, since about 3 months, we have been talking about this particular fact that we divide the programming into three categories: L1, L2, and L3. So the L1 programmers are the programmers who are the classical programmers, learned about programming, and they write all their code by hand. That's how it has been for the past 10 years before the GenAI, etc. came in. So that is the L1 level of a programming. Now L3 is something that we call as a vibe coders, where they are the business domain experts, or they are directing everything with the prompts, and they are just ensuring that the code works by going into the, let's say, browser or whatever the application is being built, and ensuring that it works. So they are providing instructions, they are checking if it works or not, but they are not looking at the code at all. So they are completely away from, or extracted away from, the code base. And because of that, sometimes the code quality can also be compromised, and the AI is completely in charge of taking the decisions as to the quality of the code and the design and the architecture and everything, right? So on one side we have L1 developers doing everything by hand, and on other side we have L3 developers who are the vibe coders, who are not even paying attention to the quality of the code, just going with the functionality part of it. So the L1 tend to be slower and L3 are very fast. So between that we have L2 programmers. These are the programmers who are vibe coders, but these are also the programmers who understand the programs. So these are L1 category programmers migrating into L2. With their skill sets, what can happen is they can bring the quality of the L1 and the speed of development from the L3, and then marry them together. So this L2 is a slider, and everyone is, as soon as you get a Windsor for a cursor, you're immediately onto the L2 bandwagon, right? Within a company, our goal is to move them as close to the L3 as possible while keeping the quality of the L1. And that's the experiment that we are focusing on quite a lot. So let's see how that goes, but very interesting times.
Did it take you a while to land on that, or was that kind of how you started out of the gate once you started introducing these new tools?
So the initial experimentation started with some of the enthusiastic team members trying out different things. I think we started about 2 years back trying out some of the tools that were already available for programming. That time, majority of the work was just getting one function completed or some one line auto-suggested by the AI. And now we are into a age where the agentic web and the tools and everything is available. Now we have made it compulsory for everyone to use it. Once upon a time, it was just a hobbyist trying out new things and new tools. But going forward, I see that it would not be. Here is the thing: if you have C as a programming language, why wouldn't you want to write everything in C? And why would you want to write it in Ruby? Because Ruby has its own advantages in terms of being able to write programs very fast, because we are having so many abstractions that are available to us, right? So the productivity gain is immense. So if you want to build a startup specific web applications, Ruby is a good choice. You wouldn't want to consider C unless it justifies it, right? So I see that going forward, the same thing will happen with the GenAI as well. That would be considered as a default choice to be able to generate all the code with that. And then unless you can justify writing something by hand, there won't be a use case for that.
Yeah.
That.
I feel like this is something you could also give an entire talk on. It's so interesting and relevant. And I think there's a lot of programmers out there who are still trying to figure out, should I be vibe coding? What are the best tools to use? How should I get started? How do I integrate this into my work? I feel like that can be really overwhelming because this is a brand new paradigm for programming. So yeah, maybe possible talk for next year.
Yeah, sure.
But I would love, of course, to talk about this year's RailsConf. You are going to be talking about design decisions over the last 2 decades of Rails. What inspired that topic?
What I feel is like over the years, I have mentored quite a lot of Rails developers. So as I was trying to teach Ruby to my brother, the Ruby Vernac project came out because I was trying to teach. The same way this particular topic came out, that when you know why behind something, you tend to remember those things better and appreciate and understand those things better. When I'm trying to teach Rails to anyone, there are certain things that are completely taken for granted. So having really nice asset management available within the framework itself, right? Or something like strong parameters. A developer who is trying to get his work done, sometimes they feel that why is strong parameters something that I need to configure each and every time? But then if you look behind the story of why strong parameters came into the existence, the story goes in a way that there was once a developer trying to, or a hacker trying to point out that there was a bug, a security issue in a Rails infrastructure wherein he can hack into any Rails application and try to change certain parameters. And it wasn't taken seriously back then. So what he did was he created certain commits onto GitHub. GitHub being a Rails application could be hacked that way. So he created certain commits into the Rails repository with a DHS name. And it was a, I think it was a pull request that he created, which was not authorized by DHS. So he used that same flaw to hack into. So it was a big deal on Hacker News that such a big security flaw was found, and that's when the strong parameters got introduced. So knowing this backstory, what happens if you don't have the strong parameters is such a big revelation. And then the kind of modularity that we have within the Rails framework before the merger with the MERB framework, it wasn't there. So how come that came to be? So there are a lot of how come that came to be type of stories that are present into Rails entire structure or the architecture, I would say. And that is something that this talk will try to put forth. What inspired this talk? I just feel that telling the why behind something is a really good reason, is a really nice way to teach someone, because then you're give a man a fish or teach him fishing, that phrase, right? So it's like that. Telling why behind the things makes people more aware about it. So this is collection of the stories behind a lot of whys. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love how Rails has such a rich history behind it. I feel like that's not something that can be said for a lot of programming languages and frameworks that are popular today. And I'm just really excited about this conference because it's a good opportunity to explore that history and, like you said, all the whys behind things. And hopefully, attendees will leave with new depth of perspective about why Rails is the way it is. Do you feel like understanding the history of Rails and some of the design decisions, is that something that impacts the way you work in your day to day?
Yes. So, for example, I would say that when it comes to the security side of the things, so Rails abstracts away so much of a security related work for you that sometimes you tend to not even know what all things are going under on it. And then, if sometimes some issue or something comes up, then you have quite a lot of finding and the research to do. In that sense, knowing about whys and how it came to be the way it is, that's how it is. It certainly helps, is what I feel.
I can't wait to see your talk. And other than giving your talk, of course, what are you looking forward to about this last RailsConf? What are you most excited about?
Yeah, I was just looking at some of the tweets and community members sharing. So I'm really looking forward to meeting all those people. I have never met DHS before, so this year that will also happen. I think I had done a couple of RubyConfs before. The last RailsConf that I did was back in 2022. And then apart from that, yeah, so since the very first RubyConf that I attended, the relationships that I have developed with the people continue on Twitter mainly, or now x.com. And over the years, some nice bonds have been formed over this online relationship. And then when we are at the conferences, we finally get to meet and see those people in person. So that's the charm of it, that you make certain new friends on Twitter and come over their article, or you are looking at someone's open source work and then finally getting to meet them in person, and sometimes just meeting and saying thank you, and sometimes geeking out about certain topics of what all things that are happening with the Ruby and Rails. That those discussions is something that I'm really looking forward to.
Absolutely. I'm excited about the hallway track. I'm going to follow you on Twitter after this if I'm not already too. And I'll drop a link as well in the show description so folks can find you there. Is there anything else that you'd want to share about your work or your talk or anything else before we wrap this up?
Something that also came to my mind. So the second or third RubyConf that I had attended, I remember, I mean, I talked about the community part and meeting people part. So I had created one application called as whyloveruby.com. And then the application simply allowed you to add your reason why you love Ruby. And then if you are looking at some reasons that are collected there, you can also go ahead and upvote some of these reasons. And then the number one reason that got upvoted there was a picture of Brazilian RubyConf, where it was the entire community and the picture was taken and uploaded there. And the reason that was added was, I'm here because of the community. And that got upvoted the highest. So I would say it's not just the professional work, but even in the personal life, I have so many good friends from these conferences that even when I went to digital nomading, they have offered me places to stay in their houses. So the relationships and the bonds that are made there are like so deep. So yeah.
I feel like I've had a similar experience too. Your last RailsConf in 2022 was my first RailsConf, but even in this short time, I feel like I've made so many lifelong friendships and learned so much from this community. So I'm incredibly grateful to be part of it as well, and just excited to see everyone in 10 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm looking
Same here.
forward to meeting you in person. I don't know if we actually intersected in 2022, but it'll be great to link up in Philly and talk shop a little bit. Just really looking forward to it.
Sure, sure. Sounds good. I'm also looking forward to.
Awesome, Ratnadeep. Thank you again for your time today, and we will see you very soon.
See you soon. Thank you.